Are you interested in honest and open perspective and discussion? Do you enjoy hearing people challenge the status quo, even if it means examining the bumps and bruises of the free thought community? Do the reverberations of the echo chamber make everything you hear sound trite and jaded? Are you ready for a show that dares to hold all people up to the light, to examine our biases and blind spots? Are you a humanist? Then the Q might be for you. Come check out the secular safe space for critical thought, cross-examination, and a caring ear where it's humanism first, secularism always, and where I really don't give a shit if you're an atheist or not. Come join the conversation by searching for The Q on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever aggregator you use, but be warned, I've taken the padding off the sharp corners.
To another episode of Secular Stories. As I start every episode, we'd like you to go to Jason Cameau's webpage at www.A Lost State of Mind. Go check out his music. Go buy some of his music. He's just an awesome human being because he just really is. He's really a cool person. And I actually have someone on tonight that can speak personally about Jason Cameau. Tonight we have the host of The Q, among 16 other projects that he has going on, Paul Sading. How are you doing tonight,
I'm
Paul?
doing very well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Finally got you wrangled on here.
It only took us about a year, so, no big deal.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Actually, a little longer than a year, but who's counting, really? I mentioned, did you do infinity plus one amount of podcasts? Can you name all those off in one breath?
That would be tough even for me, and I like to talk too. I love it. It is for anybody who's ever tried it, and I think I can comfortably at least take a stab at this with you. It's pretty addicting once you get into the science of it, and you kind of get a little bit of a grip on the science of podcasting. It's a lot of fun to do. It's very addicting. I have fallen victim to my addiction, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm like you. I just like to talk a lot, which listener to this podcast can probably attest to. You haven't listened to any of my stuff, so you'll find out on your own. But yeah, let's count them off. You've got the Q, which is the Q is actually how I got to, after several rebrandings. It's called the Q.
Yeah.
That's how I actually got to know you.
Correct. Yeah.
What's the Q about? Or give us the history of it. How about that?
Well, I can do that. That'll be easier. The Q, as it's currently branded, as you were so kind to indicate, it has gone through a couple iterations. As I evolve, that show has evolved because it's very personal to me. It was the first podcast that I ever started doing. So what happened with that one was I was living in Montgomery, Alabama at the time. I was surrounded by Christians. I had been a doubter of religion for a very long time, but being surrounded by those types of people, and that's not everybody in Alabama. Obviously, there's some good people in Alabama, but it is suffocatingly Christian. And what I soon found out was that my ire and my anger were getting the best of me, and I needed an outlet. I fell off the fence. I was no longer one of those annoying spiritual, not religious people, and I fell off that fence because of being surrounded by those types of Christians. It got me to really have to look in the mirror and say, all right, seriously, Paul, you can't ride this fence anymore. And I thankfully I fell on the right side of history and decided, I'm completely done. This God thing's a lie, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But I needed an outlet because I wasn't surrounded by friendly voices, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be able to relate to. I couldn't. I was in the military. I could not talk about this stuff on my job. So 9 hours of my day, my waking day, I couldn't be who I really was. My wife, love her to death. She doesn't care. She just wants people to treat each other right, and she wants to be happy. She doesn't want to have these deep conversations. I needed something, so I found Twitter. So I get on Twitter, and I start debating people as an outlet for my anger, my angry atheist phase, and I realize as I start debating more and more Muslims, I don't know a thing about Islam. I need to get smart. So what I was going to do originally was read through the Quran, and I needed something to keep me motivated, so I was going to tweet about it. And I got through the first surah, which is the first book of the Quran, and I realized, which is seriously like 20 paragraphs. It's very short. So by that early on, I realized I can't do this via tweet. I have to do something that's going to keep me motivated. How about if I just read it and, provide some commentary, some insight, some funniness to it while I'm doing it through a podcast? I've got this cheap $50 mic. Let me try it. And that's how Quranify Me was born, it was going to be a podcast that was strictly, let's get through this damn book together from a skeptical, secular view, atheist view. Let's see what it says. Let's make some fun of it, and let's go. What happened, though, was for any of your listeners who have ever tried to read it, it's it can be, if you're a humanist, if you're truly a humanist, it can be a very hard book to read. One, it's absolutely horrible. There's nothing stimulating.
I was going to say, you got better as you went along, adding comedy into it, but yeah, until you actually figured out your voice and how to get the comedy in there, it's painful, and it's not your fault.
Oh, it's so painful. That second episode, for obviously there's a lot of people who will find me even now and go back and download the entire catalog, and I wonder what they think when they get to that second episode. The first episode was just shitty sound quality, and it was me telling you why I was doing it. The second episode, I actually got into the Quran. I read 100 verses because I thought that would be a good idea. And man, that was an hour-long podcast of me reading verbatim from the Quran. It was horrible. God, it was horrible. But so it really took a toll on me. I'm very much a humanitarian. I very much care about people, everybody. I care about everybody. And I started realizing this isn't healthy for me. This doesn't do anything therapeutic. It's actually making me more angry than I was. And it wasn't rewarding. I was going through some depression. It was just a whole mix of things that just did not need to be. So I took a hard look. I had promised folks I was going to finish the book. I looked at my own personal struggles with depression, and I said, can't do it. I need to change something. So the Q was born. And the Q was born from a couple things. One, I wanted to get away from just Quran and Islam stuff. And I wanted to expand my offerings and the things that I was interested in. Because with Quranify Me, like you said, I started introducing skits, literally because the Quran is that boring and that horrible. I had to try to liven it up. So I would create characters and do skits to try to make points. I think it's episode 31 is an entire episode that's just a skit. It's about a breastfeeding fatwa that an imam in, I think, Egypt issued at one point, a religious edict. Mm-hmm. And that was so ridiculous.
He was the same one that did the women are cheating if they swim in the ocean. I still remember that one very well. That guy was
a trip. So, I did all those things and it still wasn't what I needed it to be. So that's when I went with the whole, we're going to do a rebrand completely. I'm going to hit the pause button. We're going to kill this show as is. We're going to do a rebrand. And now I get to focus on positive humanism. I'm going to keep doing the Quran.
Let me pause you there. Before we go into the Q and the reading the Quran and the humanism, there are some things that did come out of Quranify Me that I think are truly significant. Some of the interviews you did were just outstanding. Can you mention some of the people that you actually had whenever it was still under the branding of the Quranify Me? Because those required, they need to be touted because those were really
well.
Good.
Thank you first for that. And yeah, one of the things whenever I hang up the microphone, one of the things I'll always look back on very fondly and very proudly is, like you're saying, those interviews. I realized that reading the Quran wasn't going to be a thing that was going to last. And like I said, I want to talk to people. I'm an extrovert. I can't do this stuff alone. It's not my thing. And I wanted to start talking to ex-Muslims. So I figured, since this is at that time, the only English language podcast that focused on the Quran and Islam, let's go do this. Let's go talk to ex-Muslims and feature them exclusively, because nobody else is doing that. Every show will have one on, that token ex-Muslim, but then they'll move on to other things that their audience wants to hear. I wanted to focus on them. So there were a number of them. There was a young lady named Gada that I talked to that it's a dark spot in my podcast history, if you will, because she was in hiding from her parents, from her family. We did that episode. She disappeared for a few months after that. She finally reached out to me after those few months and said that she was safe, but that she was going to have to go into hiding because of that show. Not that either one of us did anything wrong, but that was the poignant point for me and a lot of Westerners to understand, is this woman lived in America, and as an ex-Muslim, simply doing an interview, talking about her experience, leaving religion, her family struggles, put her in that much danger that she had to completely disappear from social media. And I haven't talked to her since. It's a painful part of that legacy of that show. But there are also some beautiful things that I got to take part in. I got to talk to Shane and Sarah, an ex-Muslim and an American military guy who were forcibly split apart because of the fact that she's not supposed to be marrying a white military guy.
Yeah, how'd that work out for the family?
Well, and the beautiful thing about that is those of your listeners who know me personally and follow me on Facebook, Shane and Sarah are both friends of mine on there now, and she went back to Canada, and unfortunately, because her family had held her passport, she had to leave America, go back. She was there for about a half year. I put a call to action out to the ex-Muslims that I'm friends with, and it was great. I mean, man, they came out of the woodwork to help her, give her a place to live, give her a job while she was forced back into the situation. The good news of that story is about 8 or 9 months later, she was able to get all the documents she needed to travel. She traveled back to the U.S. Her and Shane are back together, and about 3 months ago, they officially announced their engagement. So, another success story of love overcoming religion. So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And I think the highlight has to be talking to Ensaf Hadir.
Yep. That was on my notes to go over.
Yeah, I mean, that was, Iman was my first ever interview with an ex-Muslim. She's the one who really knocked down the walls for me and took a chance on me, because at that stage I was angry at religion. I realize I am a white, heterosexual, ex-military male, so I am not the group necessarily that has a reputation for being open to having an honest discourse. So I'll always eternally be in Mom's favor for giving me that chance. But she also knocked down the walls for me to talk to Ensaf. And for your listeners who may not know, Raif Badawi is a Saudi political prisoner. He's a Saudi Arabian. She is as well. And he had a skeptical blog. A humanist skeptical blog. He wanted Saudi Arabians to look at their reality and question and think, not rebel. He didn't encourage, political overthrow. He just did want to, some of his more insightful things were, look at us as a culture. There's no threat to the power establishment, at least explicitly in that, but those are the types of writings that he did that landed him to this day still in a Saudi jail. Yeah. And Ensaf is his wife. She fortunately is living in Canada, and I mean, bless that woman, right? On an atheist show, bless that woman, because she spends day in and day out traveling all over the world, sitting down with politicians, trying to work these avenues to put pressure on the Saudi regime to let him go. Him and his lawyer, let them go. But I'll tell you what, to be able to talk to that incredible woman and have Iman, translate for me, and being able to
and get choked up.
Oh my God, man, that was really powerful. Iman ended up breaking down in the episode because there's a human story to all of these things, and Ensaf and Raif's story is one of those struggles that a lot of folks, I wish we would pay as a global community.